Thanks very much for having me down here. I'm going to be with you, hopefully, for about 45 minutes or so, talking about something which I hope will be of use to all of you in some way, shape or form, to talk about essay writing. In terms of a bit of context, clearly essays are something that come across us all in our careers in the Army, whether you're looking ahead to a CLM course of some sort, or you're going to do one of the officer career development courses that you have to do, an MA course, etc., or for the future on ICSC and beyond. There's hopefully a lot of value in this presentation for you, and I'll talk a bit more about how it's going to play out in just a minute. In fact, we'll start from there. So, in terms of an aim for the session, it's this, okay? So my aim is to develop your skills in writing clear, evidenced, and persuasive essays in order to support personal and career development. So whether you're doing this, I've just talked about mandatory career courses. If that's one of the reasons that you want to do this, so that when you go on a CLM course, we do see people struggle with essay writing when they come on CLM. It's quite common. People haven't done it for a long time. It's like anything, isn't it? If you haven't done it for a long time, then it's going to be hard, isn't it? So anything we can do here to help make that process easier will be of benefit to you. And equally for the officers going on officer career development courses, it should be useful for you too. But the verbs that are worth looking at, or the adjectives rather, are worth keeping in mind. This is what we're looking to do. At the end of this session, hopefully, you should be in a better position to write essays that are clear, that are evidenced, and that are persuasive. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. It's not just about career stuff, though. We always focus on career things. That's important, but also for personal development. If you're looking to do some sort of higher education in your own time, this should help. And equally, if you've got kids who are getting into that age where they're doing essays at school or whatever it is, writing applications for university or whatever it might be, this is only going to help you to help them to do that effectively and to be nice and clear. I've got some specific objectives as follows. And so I'm hoping that by the end of the session, you should be able to do these three things. First of all, read and study more effectively. There's a process we'll talk about here. It's not just about sitting down with a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen and writing an essay. It's about what goes before that, getting yourself to the line of departure, if you like, if you want to use a military term, in good order so that when you actually go ahead and do what you need to do, you're in a position to do it. It's not just about sitting down with a pen and paper. Apply a process. I'm going to major on that. Probably about 80% of the time we'll focus on a process. So kind of like the orders headings, you plug the information, the analysis that you've done up here in your estimate, you plug into a set of orders. A bit like that, we'll focus on the process to help you. If you're doing a timed essay, for example, you can sit down, bang out some headings, and then fill in those headings with information to write a good essay. And then the key word in this last objective is the first word, start. Okay, start producing well-structured, convincing arguments on paper to influence the reader. Okay, by the end of this session, whatever it is, 45 minutes, you're not going to be an essay ninja if you're not already. That's just not going to happen, okay? So to manage your expectations. But what we will do is lay a solid foundation that can set you off on the right path. So hopefully it'll be of use to you. A few caveats as well. What I'll say are entirely my opinions, okay? So other people in the room might have different opinions, and that's great, okay? In the spirit of critical thinking, which is what this is all about, don't just accept what I tell you as gospel. I like to be challenged. We should be thinking in a way that challenges what we hear. That's what it's all about. So it's just my opinions. Subject suitability. This should be good for anything that you're going to write in a military context. Any kind of essays you're going to be set in a military context. The way I talk and the sort of structure I give you should be appropriate for that. It's not appropriate for everything. So if you're someone who's got a keen interest in science or another kind of subject, it might be less suitable for that. But for the kind of stuff we're talking about in the military, war studies, international affairs, that kind of stuff, it's appropriate. And we're also slightly constrained by time. So apologies. Normally my style is much more conversational. That's probably going to be less so today because we're short of time. So we'll keep it concise and it'll be more of me talking. So apologies for that. Okay, so by way of an intro, it's a rhetorical question really, but what is an essay and what does it aim to achieve? If you think about it, when you sit down to write an essay on a course, what are you actually trying to do? What is it all about? That's my kind of I would argue that that's what an essay is. Okay, it's simply a written argument containing, and it has to contain these things to be a good essay: evidence, and opinion. Okay, either if you have an imbalance in an essay, it's either just full of opinion, this is what I think, or it's just evidence and you don't give your opinion, then it's going to be a weaker essay. So it needs to contain both of those things. And it aims to convey arguments clearly and to influence the reader. And that point is key, influence the reader. We don't write essays just to kind of chuck out a piece of work that we get back with an average grade. It's relatively easy to do that. What we're really trying to do to really raise the bar and do an excellent job is to really influence and persuade the reader to think, to agree with our argument, make it convincing. So have a think before we kick off, and this is again a rhetorical question. Just have a think in your own mind. If I said to you, right, go next door now. There's a load of desks and chairs laid out. Go and write an essay about this subject. How would you do it? Just have a think to yourself. What would you do? How would you structure? Would you have a plan? Would you structure it in a certain way? How would you do it? And if the answer in your head is, I'm not sure actually how I would do that, then this is hopefully going to be of use to you. Okay, so we're moving relatively fast. We'll dive straight into the suggested process. And I would argue there are 4 stages to writing effectively. And again, what I should have said at the start, this isn't just about writing an essay in an education centre in the army. Okay, this is about communicating effectively on paper. So whether it's emailing people, whether it's or writing a piece of staff work at work, which again catches people out on CLM courses. People come on CLM, they've not really done it before, but increasingly as you go up through the ranks, that's how you persuade people. You don't just have conversations in the mess. You put stuff on paper, you formalise it, you submit it, and someone says yes or no. That's how you get stuff done. So it's not just about writing an essay. It could be about writing a dissertation if you're going to go on and do some further education, or it could be at work writing staff work to get stuff done, to acquire new equipment, to make changes in the unit that you want to make in terms of how you do business, whatever it might be. It's about all of that stuff. And the first thing you need to do in any of those things actually is question analysis. So this first bubble up here, the 4 bubbles are question analysis, preparation, following a structure, and then referencing and proofreading at the end. So first of all, I could draw your attention to what was on the top of your pile on your seat, which was the Joint Services Command and Staff College Essay Writing Guide. It's a really good document. You can get it online. Anyone going to ICSC will be given a copy of it there as well. And it's really good. I can't remember the specific page, but there is a page in there relatively early on that has some interesting definitions that you need to look at. So if you think to being on exercise or on operations, and why do we use effect verbs? Why do we have effect verbs?
Clarity.
Yeah. Clarity for who? Yeah, for everybody. So you know very precisely what you're asking someone to do, and they know very precisely what they need to do to achieve the effect that you've defined for them, or that you've set them. So here's some examples, okay? So in essay writing terms, we're not so much into the destroy and the defeat, hopefully. We're into analyse, assess, clarify, comment upon. Any other ones that are familiar from writing essays?
Compare sometimes.
Yeah, compare and contrast, etc., etc. So you need to know what that means. That's the only point I'm trying to make here, and it will give you that in the essay writing guide there. You need to know what you're being asked, because if you don't, you could do a really good job of answering the wrong question. Which is of no use to you. So you could get an average grade or a not so average grade because you've done a good job of answering the wrong question. Really common at ICSC, common in lots of places. So even relatively senior people, probably true all the way up actually. If you don't understand the question and answer it, then you're on the wrong path. About going back slightly, there's also a really good site I found in the preparation for this lecture, whatever we want to call it. If you search the University of Leicester essay writing online, they've got a really, really good guide. It's the best I found on the internet. It's a really good guide to question analysis, understanding what you're being asked to do, so that when you sit down and do it, again, you're going on the right path. So have a look at that as well. So question analysis is absolutely key. I would spend lots of time. It's like mission analysis, right? And in the 7 questions 1 to 3, do your mission analysis. If you get that right, everything else will follow. If you get that wrong, then you go off and do the wrong path, down the wrong path, and you don't achieve the effects that are the correct ones. So question analysis, step 1. Step 2 is preparation. And again, I can't really emphasize this enough, and it's something I didn't do very well. I didn't used to do this that well. I do it much better now. Is actually, if you think about it, think back to a time when you were set an essay. For some people, that'll be tricky, I appreciate. If you think back to when you were set an essay, how did you do it? Where did the information come from? How did you manage that information? How did you absorb it? How did you organize it? How did you prepare yourself to be able to reach back into it when you actually came to write the essay? Did you have a plan, a structure? Did you write it in a book? Did you, I don't know, what did you do? And I'm going to give you a couple of options here, which will hopefully help you do this. And again, you do this well, and everything else will be easier. Has anyone seen these before, Evernote or OneNote? Yeah, so Evernote, perhaps slightly less well known, but it's commercial. You have to pay for it. OneNote is free. You'll see it we've got it on Office 365 now as well, and it's free to download. It's really good, and I'm going to dive into that now. I use this as a bit of a geek. Okay, basically the way it works is like this, and don't worry about seeing the detail here. I'll explain it. But basically, it's a whole way to organise different books. So down on the left-hand side here are all the books that I've got open to me. So they're either from various jobs, the OC55 AEC, ICSCL. I had a whole book for that, or you call it a folder if you like, I suppose. Or they refer to them as notebooks here. But within a notebook, you have a number of sections, just like a folder at work. If you've got some dividers in a folder, so you've got a folder for, I don't know, this one here is the course I did not so long ago. It's a master's degree. You have a folder for that. Within there, you have a load of sections or dividers. So this one's international politics. Within international politics, you have a ton of pages. And then on that page, you have the actual text itself. Make sense? So really, really easy. And I've got one here which is lessons from reading. Perhaps a better example, I should have brought it up. But this is going to sound really geeky now, but knowing that I'm going to go on to do certain things in the future, if I read a book and I don't want to just read it and forget everything that I learned from that book, I'll have lessons from reading, and I have, for example, in here, World War II, contemporary operations, and whatever, different sections. And within that, contemporary operations, I just read a really good book by David Kilcullen. So I'll just write notes. If there's really interesting quotes or things that I stick in my mind, I'll just write them down on this page. So I know in the future, if I'm going to go back and be asked to write an essay or to have a debate about something, I've got a bit of a bank of information I can refer back to. It doesn't actually take that much longer to do it either. You can do this on your iPhone. So you can get OneNote on your iPhone. And if you sat there reading a book in a cafe somewhere, you can just, if you think that's a really interesting point, plug it in, and it's saved there for good, and you can access it wherever you are. But it's just a useful way to store information and not just forget it. Because I think it was, who was it now? American general, can't remember which one, but talks about the difference between reading and studying. It's not just about reading stuff, you have to study it. And that takes a bit more effort and a bit more structure and a bit more of a plan. Okay, so that's OneNote, and it's really good. There are other resources as well in terms of, getting the information in. JSTOR, has anyone not heard of JSTOR? There will be a few. I'd be surprised if everyone had yet. Thanks for your honesty. So JSTOR is a load of online journals. If you do a higher education course at a university, they almost all give you access to JSTOR. Think of it as a massive academic Google. You can just Google the subject you want to learn about or read about, and it will give you a load of journal articles or books or whatever that are relevant to that subject. So it's a useful thing to access. The closest you can get for free is ProQuest, which you can access. If you go on the Defence Gateway and click on, you come up with the standard apps, MyAdmin, DLE, all that sort of stuff, Army Knowledge Exchange. There's another one which looks like this, which is the Army Library and Information Service, or ALICE. Click on that, and there's a whole load of great stuff in there. ALICE are brilliant, and they're massively underused as well. They'll give you stuff for free, books for free, journal articles for free, all sorts of really interesting stuff. They'll also give you access to this ProQuest, which is a similar version of JSTOR, where you can access loads of articles and bits and pieces. They will also, if you have a specific essay to write on a certain subject, get in touch with Alice, give them your essay title. Somebody somewhere in the Army Library Service world will go around, find books and journal articles, photocopy stuff, put it in a massive jiffy bag for you, and send it to you in the post for free. Really useful, resource that people don't know about. So it's worth using it. And equally, books, if you're going to do a course or you just want to read stuff, professionally or personally, get in touch with Alice. They'll either have it. If they don't have it, they'll get it from another Army library. If they can't do that, they'll get it from a civilian library and loan it in. And if they can't do that, sometimes they'll just buy it for you and give it to you on a long-term loan. So you never need to pay for your own books. And you can send them all internal mail as well, so it won't cost you anything in postage. So it's a cracking service. Other ways to get more information in. Has anyone ever heard of this website called fullfact.org? Set up, I think, around the time of or just prior to the Brexit referendum, 2016. And they are an independent fact-checking charity. So they're really good, actually. And whatever the argument is, you see stuff, they'll pull things apart. So whether it's Prime Minister's questions or Newsnight or, just debates that are going around in the media about, whether it's, I don't know, pick an easy couple, immigration, healthcare, the NHS, things that people band around in Parliament about facts and figures, this is true, that's true. They will analyse it in detail and just present the facts as they are. They're not biased, so they will say if something is correct and it's a slightly sensational headline, but it's correct actually, they will say that. And equally, they'll say if it's not true. So a really good source of information. And again, going back to the start, writing in a way, whether it's for staff work or essays, that is evidence-based. It's got to be evidence-based. Don't just say, there's too many, the NHS doesn't get enough money. Well, actually, according to what? You've got to look for some facts and evidence to back up your argument. Otherwise, do you remember I talked about evidence and opinion? Otherwise, you're just in the game of having too much opinion and not enough evidence. Okay, so really good website, and it's all free to access. Some really good podcasts online. There's one example from the University of Oxford, Oxford Sparks, really great podcasts. If you're commuting, you can get the app. You can go on again, if you've got an iPhone, for example, or I'm sure there are plenty of other apps, go on and you can download interesting podcasts from really high sort of hitting speakers on a whole load of subjects. Download them for free, and if you're commuting somewhere or you're in the gym and whatever you want to do, however you want to learn it, you can just listen to things for free. I found that really useful. Obviously, newspapers, be careful what you read. Some are clearly, they all have a different political lean, and if you're reading things that are very, very easy to digest and a bit sensational, then there's probably more to the story than you think there is. My grandparents are dreadful for this. They will pull the headline off the front cover of the Daily Express and then think that's the truth. Not always the truth. So just be careful what you read. University short course program. I've spoken about this before, doing company briefs and things, but there's some great university short courses out there that you can apply for free. You rock up, go and learn about something really interesting for 3, 4, 5 days with other people from the RAF, the Army, the Navy, in civilian clothes, at universities. Everything's paid for, the accommodation's sorted, the food. Another good way to just learn about certain subjects. There's stuff on counter-terrorism, leadership and management, international relations. It's a really good program, and I'd recommend it to everybody of all ranks as well. Not enough junior people, particularly soldiers, going on those courses, but it's a great opportunity. And finally, Chatham House, as one example of a think tank. The Army has a corporate membership for Chatham House, and I can give you, after this, I can email it around, the login, the username and the password for that account. So again, really up-to-date, high-quality journal articles about subjects that are of relevance to what we do in the world, theatres of operation, etc. So there, and that's not everything. That's just a canter through some of the ways you can absorb information to plug into your, if you're going to use OneNote to track what you read in preparation to write essays or whatever. There's loads of stuff out there, and it's all really good, most of it. And then we get onto the key bit. Okay, so what do you do with that information? So you might have tracked some of it in an app like OneNote or Evernote. There's another way as well, and I'll draw your attention now to the 2 other sheets of paper you've got here, which are 2 sheets that look very similar, landscape ones. There's a literature review, and then the other one is literature review sorted by chapter. So just to give you an example, this is what I did for a recent qualification that I did, as one example. So if you're not into OneNote, you've got a very specific essay to write. You can do a load of reading for that, and as you read, just plug into a table on Microsoft Word, for example, the quotes that you've read from that book, and then any comments or observations that you'd make about it, anything that interests you. Do that all the way down, and you'll be left quite quickly with a whole load of table, with a long table, each line, same author, different quote, same author, different quote, all the way along, with comments that you want to make on the right-hand side there. So then what you get is, I don't know, it depends on the length of the essay, right? Or how much you read. But you might have a 6, 7, 8-page Word document with loads of quotes on it from different authors. Okay. At that point, hopefully, having done your question analysis that we talked about, having done some reading, having tracked what you've read in a document like that, you then should have an idea of how you're going to structure your answer, maybe. So if you look on top of the other one where it says sorted by chapter, you can see that I've got, this is from the dissertation that I wrote at the time. So there are 4 chapters that I broke it down into. So I had an idea in my head at that point of, I think I'm going to have 4 chapters. I think this one's going to be like this one's going to be like this, and so on. And then what I was able to do is to just sort that table that I'd written, go down the right-hand column and think, where does the quote that I've written here best fit? Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4, or actually, shall I just ditch it? So I numbered down the right-hand column each of those quotes by chapter, and then sort the table, and then instantly you've got Chapter 1 quotes, bang. So when you sit down to write Chapter 1 or the first part of the essay or whatever it might be, all of your material is right there. You can print it out right next to you, start writing your essay, and everything you need, all the quotes, and if you're really good as well, you reference it correctly, everything you need is there ready for you, and then you just crack on. It's much easier than just trying to sort of reach into that book, have a look back here, go over there, have a look at this article that I sort of half remember. It's just a more structured way of doing it. So those are useful, hopefully, those 2 documents as an idea to how to do a literature review. And it doesn't have to be huge like this. This was for a dissertation. This is like a probably 3 pages of a 20, 25-page document. It doesn't have to be that big. It could be 1 page. But as long as you have some sort of system to track what you've read, then you're going to be in a much better state when you come to write an essay. Okay. So that's stage 2, preparation. This is the really key part, I suppose. And if you were going to take something away to use in the future, this is it now. Okay. And there's another handout that you've got, which is this short one here, portrait document with essay planning written on it. And that breaks down what I'm going to talk about now, so the structure of writing an essay. So if you were instantly set an essay somewhere on a course or whatever, I would suggest that you want to follow, if you don't have a plan, follow a structure like this. Okay, and I'll talk through it in a minute. And the last handout you've got is an essay that I wrote. It's only a short one, but it gives you a good example of how that the structure is used in practice. Okay, so we'll talk through it now. So the first part, you need an introduction. What do you think you do in an introduction? Without asking a really obvious question. What should you include in an introduction on an essay, do you think?
Parameters?
Well, okay, I suppose you could, but not according to this structure.
What is about?
The subject of the essay.
Yeah, and anything else? Do you think? Would you give your argument in an introduction? Would you say up front what you are going to do in the essay? Do you think?
Yeah.
Absolutely yes. Yeah, and people don't do it. People sometimes think, well, I'm going to leave it till the end. It'll be a surprise, like a murder mystery, and I'll talk about all sorts of stuff, and then I'll get to the end, and then I'll give them my opinion. You just can't do that. If you think about people are going to be marking your essays are human beings, you need to state up front in an introduction, this is what I'm going to do. This essay is all about X. During this essay, I'm going to demonstrate that this is the case, that's the case, this is true, that's not true, and I'm going to do that by doing this. I'm going to explain, I'm going to give 3 case studies of ABC, and then at the end I'm going to sum up and I'll conclude and whatever. But you've got to state up front exactly what you're going to do. It's like a lesson, right? If you EDIP lesson on a basic sort of or defence instructional techniques course, you tell them what you're going to do, you do it, and then you tell them what you've done at the end. Okay, it's simple. Keep it simple. So that's the introduction, and it's really important. People do that wrong all the time. Tell them what you're going to do. Clearly, sometimes it's easiest to write that last. If you're typing an essay, it might be easiest to write that last, okay? Because then you can summarise and you know exactly what you are about to do because you've just done it. Conditions is the point James just made there. This is a really interesting paragraph and it's really important. If you get set a big topic, a big essay topic somewhere, whether it's a CLM course, they are big topics. Is Donald Trump's presidency in the US good or bad for global stability? A massive question, huge question. You just cannot answer that question and incorporate every possible element of it. You've got to cut it down. Okay, you've got to cut it down. So this is the paragraph where you do that. So in this paragraph, in this essay, I will only be looking at this narrow, precise element of Donald Trump's foreign policy, for example, or his domestic policy, or whatever it might be. Good luck with that, by the way. But that's what you need to do in this paragraph: is make it really, really precise, concise, and targeted, and exclude stuff that you state up front. I'm not going to look at that. Okay, because you can't be criticised for not including something that you said up front, I am not going to include. Okay, so that's the paragraph when you do it. And then on this example here, so state the conditions, including any definitions as well. If there's any key terms or what have you that you're going to use during the essay, then state those up front. Challenge any assumptions. If you don't agree with the question, there's a good time to do it as well. Critical thinking is all about challenging the question, okay? So if you don't agree with the question, you think it's flawed, state it at that point. Okay. And then we're into the meat of it. So the 3, ideally 2 to 3 arguments at the minimum if you're going to write an essay in the kind of style that we're going to be experiencing in the military on a CLM course or an MA course or whatever. So your arguments, and you could split those down by category, by concept, by idea, however you want to do it. But you really want to have, but it's like, I suppose if you think of it as sort of, you're trying to knock down a target, you need a number of shots on target to get that target down. So, and they need to be good, they need to be on target, they need to be relevant, and they need to be clear. So 3 really good arguments that you think answer the question and justify your answer. Is that clear? And then the rebuttal is something that people don't do too well or don't do often enough. You could write a decent essay by having a good introduction, some conditions so it's nice and clear, some decent arguments, a summary and a conclusion. This is something that was kind of new to me, probably only a few years ago. This is the point at which you can actually elevate your score, your grade, by tackling the opposite view. So you've stated in here argument 1, argument 2, argument 3 as to why you believe something. The rebuttal is then where you push up the alternative argument. Some people would say this. Some people would say actually that all I've said is wrong. They would say this instead. But let me tell you why they are incorrect. Okay, that's what that paragraph's all about. And you'll see it in the essay example that I've given you. It's not particularly clear. There's no paragraph titled rebuttal, but it's where you do that. So at that point, once you've laid your argument out, you need to say other people say this or other people believe that, but this is why they're wrong. Okay, and that just really adds value and will can elevate your essay from a mediocre or a good grade to a really outstanding one. And then finally, you've got a summary and a conclusion, which are quite straightforward, relatively speaking, if you make them convincing and clear. Yeah, great. And and it's a good thing to do, especially in a military context. If there's any sort of policy implications or whatever of your argument, having made this case for this argument, I think the key policy implications for the army are, we don't have the right equipment to do this job, or we don't have our leadership and management training isn't sufficient for us to be able to tackle these new threats that are coming out or whatever. It's quite good to draw out some implications for the military at that point as well. So that's the structure. Okay, so if you nail that, it's like orders headings. If you nail that, you sit down at the start of an essay, take 5 minutes. If it's an hour-long essay, for example, sit down the first 5 minutes, just write those headings down, and then fill in the information that you can get from your head underneath them. If you've got that, then the next 55 minutes of that hour are going to be much more straightforward than if you don't have it. Okay, and then moving towards the end, referencing and proofreading is boring, okay, but it's really important. And again, I tried to make your life easier earlier. Do you remember the literature review? I suggested that as you read things, it takes a bit of time, but if you're good and you're doing it for something deliberate, like an essay or a dissertation, if as you read, you're writing down those quotes and then you plug in the reference. And do people know what I mean by a reference? I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence, but you need to state at the end in the references or the bibliography, which is similar, but right at the back of a piece of work, at the end of an essay, your sources. What did you read? What podcasts did you listen to? What interviews did you watch on YouTube, etc., etc. And you've got to reference them in certain ways, and there are different conventions for referencing. There's the Chicago referencing method, there's the Harvard referencing method, etc. They're all listed in here. They're listed in that guide, and also you can find them online. There's also some useful free online tools like CiteFast, where you can just type in the ISBN number of a book or the title of a book, and then pick the kind of referencing style you want, and it will give you the reference in that format. So we're talking things like the title of the book, the author's name, the date that the book was published, where it was published, who the publisher was, all that kind of stuff. And it's set up in different formats. So Chicago, the way you would lay that information out in the Chicago style is different to the Harvard style. Don't worry too much about that. But basically you should be set, when you're given an essay to write, you should be told what kind of style, what kind of referencing style is going to be used for that essay. And that's pretty much it. But if you do that up front, if you do the referencing as you go along, then you save yourself loads of time later. And always have it proofread. You do it with a piece of staff work. You wouldn't just submit it to a general. You would have people check it. It would be checked at, to different degrees depending on who you're working with, who you're working for, and so on, how much you're trusted, how experienced you are. But someone's going to check it again, or you're going to check it yourself again. I've got a good friend who's a staff sergeant in the Royal Signals. This isn't a rank specific thing. You don't have to send it to someone more senior than you. If you've got someone who who is really good, he is really good, I send him my work, he will proofread it for me and send it back with some comments. I find it really useful. So do that as well, my top tip. And that's it. That is a canter through writing an effective essay. Are there any specific questions? Anyone got any questions at all? I think that's kind of belt-fed. Yeah, Phil.
When it comes to studying or reading or researching for an essay, obviously you just finished your master's, can you offer any tips that you found for wading into something like a dissertation?
What?
So like more efficient ways of reading, etc.
Not really, other than just tracking what I read. I think I used to just read books or read journal articles and hope I remembered stuff. And then when it came to writing an essay, I would just hope I remembered enough to write something convincing. It just never worked, or it was really average. It was always kind of average. Whereas if you track it and you write it, like I did in the literature review that I've given you a paper copy of, or on OneNote, you can refer back to it. You can search on OneNote. So it just makes your life much easier. That's all I would say. Read widely and make sure you track what you read.
So the tips I would give, and this is a tip that a former ETS officer gave me, I wish I'd known it earlier, but he's now in the rifles and now brigadier, and it's to read the first line of every paragraph. don't read the whole book, because your brain cannot memorise that whole book. But if the author is a good writer, their thesis statement for that paragraph will be the first sentence in every paragraph. So if you just read the first sentence, just try it. Get not a fiction book, but get a military history book out and just read the first line of every paragraph, and you will follow what that author is saying. Now, if you don't understand what that sentence says, you can then read the rest of the paragraph, and what you'll find is it's a mini essay, that paragraph. First line is the introduction, tells you what this paragraph's going to be about, and then he'll back it up with lots of examples of why he has said that. So you'll tend to find that's a style of writing that many historians particularly use, and you can use that. And then absolutely using, I used Evernote, but I think OneNote's probably better now. We're all Microsoft up. It's a good one. A bluffer's guide, if you're at staff college. If you want it, close your ears. Mike, being a teacher. But if you're doing an essay at ICSCL, and it's on a certain subject, so we say, let's say, causes of the the invasion of Afghanistan by the Soviet Union, something like that, whatever it may be, or Kenya, whatever it may be about. Go into the library and research all the ACSC dissertations, because there's fucking hundreds of them, and there will be one loosely round that subject title. Now that is a lieutenant colonel who has spent a huge amount of time researching it. Now that doesn't mean it's going to be a very good dissertation, but what they've instantly done for you is collected for you a bibliography and all the cool quotes, maybe, that you might want to use, already referenced. Now it's not cheating, it's a shortcut. And I wouldn't just do that, I would do your own reading as well, absolutely, but it's a good way to break into a topic, is to actually find other essays in that area. Bluffer's Guide, sorry.
That's great. Any more? Any other questions? Just if there's anything else. But it's definitely worth doing, and it's worth doing and trying to get a grip of this now. As I say, we do see people coming on the courses of the Education Centre here, and it's the same across the Army, who just aren't well prepared for it. And you get really great people who are just let down by their skills because they just don't do it. And people think they're stupid. They're not stupid. The Army Sergeant Major, the last one, was my colour sergeant at Sandhurst, and he used to talk all the time about how stupid he was. He's not stupid at all. He's a really bright bloke. But he just wasn't academically experienced. He hadn't done that for a long time. I can't fire a grenade machine gun because I don't know how. But you teach me how to do it and let me practice, and I will probably be all right over time, maybe, dangerous as it is. But if you don't do it, you don't know, right? So just have the confidence, and if you're not sure, then ask somebody else. We're there all the time, so if you want to come in, and it's perhaps a final point from me, if you want to get into this in more detail, noting that this was a really short blast, you want to have a practice and submit essays to us, we'll happily read them, mark them, send them back to you. That's fine. We can't do huge masses of 50 in a go. We don't have the capacity for that. But we can do bits here and there. We can support people. We could do this in more depth at company level or however you want to do it. So please, we're here to be used. We like to be used. So please come and give us a shout.